Pickup truck sales are up across the country, but the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety says some of the most popular brands.
Pickup trucks that sold for $80,000 are now begging buyers at $20,000. This isn't a discount, it's a distress signal. Dealers are drowning, families are upside down on loans, and a market once worth $867 billion is unraveling in real time. So how did America's most profitable vehicle turn into dead weight? Why are lots filling with unsold trucks overnight? And what happens when the bubble finally bursts? Because by the time you see the end, you'll know this crash is already in your driveway. Not a sale, a siren? For years, pickup trucks were the undisputed cash machines of the American auto industry. Dealers could not keep them on lots, manufacturers pushed assembly lines to maximum output, and buyers stretched their budgets just to secure one. These machines, often priced like luxury sedans, carried an aura of permanence. Then the ground shifted. What once looked like the crown jewel has begun to resemble a millstone. Today, the same dealers who bragged about wait lists are pleading with anyone who walks through their doors. The crash did not arrive with a single spark. It came through a grinding collision of forces. Factories kept running even as warning signs flashed. Executives clung to the belief that Americans would always line up for bigger, more powerful trucks. At the same time, interest rates climbed to levels not seen in over a decade. Families who once treated monthly payments as manageable suddenly saw them balloon beyond reason. A truck that looked attainable in 2021 felt unreachable in 2024. As households pulled back, inventories stacked higher. Shiny rows of unsold vehicles became silent monuments to misplaced confidence. Dealers, once proud of their massive selections, now mutter about drowning. The markdowns that make headlines are not gifts to consumers. They are alarms ringing in the night. What seems like a bargain is in fact desperation in plain sight. Buyers walking into dealerships today often mistake desperation for generosity, but behind every handshake is a manager terrified of the next monthly bill. The mood has shifted from confidence to survival, and that shift is reshaping how the entire industry views its once reliable profit machine. But if excess supply opened the wound, electrification poured salt into it. Future underpowered. When the electric pickup was unveiled, it was sold as destiny. Ford promised the F-150 Lightning would reinvent the job site and the driveway at the same time. General Motors teased its own electrified Silverados, hinting at waiting lists stretching years into the future. The pitch was irresistible. Power, silence, and green credentials all wrapped in a familiar body. Yet reality did not match the promise. Owners quickly discovered that the range figures on glossy brochures collapsed in the real world. Towing a boat, hauling a trailer, or climbing into the mountains often cut distance nearly in half. Cold weather added insult, stripping away another 40% of usable energy. Contractors who relied on predictability suddenly found themselves searching for charging stations that either malfunctioned or did not exist where they needed them. Trucks designed to symbolize freedom instead tethered their owners to unreliable infrastructure. Word spread fast. Forums filled with complaints. Local news reported stranded drivers, and the shine of early adoption dulled into suspicion. Enthusiasm curdled into regret. The very trucks meant to prove progress instead exposed fragility. Dealers who once celebrated deliveries began whispering about returns, and buyers who had waited months walked away unimpressed. Some owners quietly admitted that their new electric pickups spent more time plugged in than on the road. Others returned them entirely, unwilling to gamble their livelihoods on batteries that drained under stress. These stories spread faster than any advertisement, becoming cautionary tales that scared off the very mainstream buyers manufacturers needed. And when Prestige EVs entered the fray, the damage escalated. If you felt let down by promises that didn't match reality, hit like right now so more people see the truth, and drop a comment below. Your story might be the warning someone else desperately needs. Luxury liability. If the Lightning was supposed to democratize electricity, the GMC Hummer EV and Cadillac Escalade IQ were meant to sanctify it. They carried six-figure price tags and were presented as proof of technological dominance. Ads depicted them as rolling monuments to power and progress. Yet on dealership lots, those monuments began to gather dust. The problems were clear the moment real customers put them to work. The Hummer weighed more than some dump trucks, devoured $400 tires, and offered a practical range under load that shrank to levels embarrassing for a vehicle of its size. The Escalade, while elegant, carried a sticker price so absurd that even wealthy buyers questioned its value. What was marketed as halo technology became instead a case study in corporate overreach. Dealers suffered in silence. Every day, these showpieces sat idle meant lost money. Managers confided that they would rather move them at a loss than continue paying to store them. For companies, the image wound was even greater. What was intended to display strength instead displayed hubris. Consumers walked past the shining metal without stopping, shaking their heads at the excess. Prestige models once symbolized aspiration, but they now symbolize arrogance. Buyers are no longer dazzled by size and flash when practicality fails. Every unsold luxury truck sitting on a lot is not just wasted money, it is a billboard of corporate hubris, reminding everyone of promises that were never fulfilled. But if vanity trucks disappointed, the workhorses betrayed trust. Workhorses betrayed. For generations, diesel pickups earned a reputation as unbreakable companions. Farmers, builders, and contractors relied on them with an almost religious faith. These were the machines that hauled equipment, pulled trailers, and endured endless miles. Yet the newest generation of diesels shattered that trust. Emission systems meant to satisfy regulators instead introduced fragility. Owners now complain of trucks falling into limp mode after a sensor failure or injectors collapsing at 30,000 miles. Fleet managers speak of half their trucks sidelined at once, leaving work undone and payments still due. Contractors who once prided themselves on fresh models now watch them sit useless in service bays. Repair bills climb into the thousands before the odometer even hits respectable figures. The mythology of invincibility has been replaced with a reality of fragility. Communities feel the sting. A broken truck is not just a personal inconvenience. It is lost wages, canceled jobs, and reputations tarnished. Reliability was supposed to be the foundation of the workhorse. Instead, complexity turned it into a liability. When work trucks falter, they take jobs with them. Contractors stranded on job sites lose income, and fleets sidelined by emission failures push small companies toward bankruptcy. The damage is not abstract. It is measured in missed contracts, layoffs, and bills unpaid. Trust is far harder to repair than machinery, and the deeper break lay in the technology choices themselves. Time bomb tech. Automakers once believed they had found a miracle shortcut to efficiency. Instead of redesigning engines from the ground up, General Motors leaned on a system called active fuel management, and its successor, dynamic fuel management. The idea was simple. Shut down half the cylinders during light driving to squeeze out extra miles per gallon. On paper, it looked ingenious, a clever trick that could satisfy regulators while keeping horsepower intact. In practice, it became a nightmare. The tiny lifters responsible for switching cylinders on and off began to fail with shocking frequency. Owners of brand new trucks reported ticking sounds, misfires, and sudden loss of power. When those lifters collapsed, they often dragged camshafts and other internal parts down with them. Instead of a modest repair, drivers faced catastrophic engine failures. Repair bills routinely stretched from $4,000 to $6,000, sometimes higher, often before a truck had even reached 60,000 miles. Lawsuits piled up, service departments overflowed, and resale values for affected models sank. What was once sold as proof of innovation was exposed as a time bomb ticking under the hood. Owners began trading horror stories online. Trucks sidelined with major engine failures at mileage that should have been barely broken in. Each failure destroyed more than an engine. It destroyed loyalty. Buyers who once swore by a brand now warn others away, showing how quickly trust can collapse when shortcuts backfire. And turbos and hybrids only added more heat. Hybrid bottleneck. When regulators and executives promised a slow transition toward electrification, hybrids and turbocharging were pitched as the perfect bridge. Buyers would enjoy fuel savings and power without giving up familiar gasoline engines. Yet what looked like a bridge turned out to be a bottleneck, cramming complexity into machines that buyers expected to be simple. Toyota, long celebrated for reliability, shocked its loyal base with problems in its twin-turbo hybrid system. Timing chain failures, overheating turbos, and limp mode episodes left owners questioning whether the company still deserved its reputation. In 2024, Toyota even recalled over 100,000 Tundras to address debris inside engines, a staggering reversal for a brand once associated with 300,000-mile durability. Ford's Power Boost hybrid added its own frustrations. Heat exchanger failures triggered electrical faults, leaving trucks stranded in service bays, while mechanics waited for hard-to-source parts. When repairs came, they were twice as expensive and twice as slow. Contractors and families who had purchased these models to future-proof their investments found themselves beta testing technology that was not ready for prime time. The bridge was supposed to make the transition easier. Instead, it choked confidence, making complexity feel like punishment rather than progress. Hybrid owners soon realized they had entered a strange limbo, too complex for small-town mechanics, yet too experimental to be fully trusted. Their trucks often sat for weeks waiting on specialists. Technology that was meant to simplify life only complicated it, leaving ordinary drivers to pay the highest price for progress. If big trucks stumbled, mid-size models carried the pain in smaller packages. Mid-size Mirage. For decades, mid-size pickups carried an unspoken promise. What you lose in size, you gain in practicality and dependability. Automakers marketed them as simpler, cheaper alternatives for buyers who did not need massive towing capacity. Yet when the latest generation hit showrooms, they carried nearly the same price tags as full-size siblings and inherited all the same flaws. Chevrolet Colorado and GMC Canyon owners reported transmission shutters that made even daily commuting a gamble. Rear differentials groaned and failed, turning what was supposed to be a practical purchase into a warranty nightmare. Ford's Ranger, reintroduced with fanfare, revealed its own weak spots as turbocharged engines sputtered and transmissions stumbled. Nissan's Frontier joined the parade of disappointment, with 9-speed gearboxes that shifted erratically and wore out faster than buyers expected. Customers who had turned to mid-size trucks for refuge found themselves paying nearly $40,000 for vehicles that behaved like worn-out beaters. Online communities buzzed with horror stories, and resale values began to slide. The promise of less truck, more sense collapsed under the weight of fragile parts and overcomplicated designs. The betrayal felt sharper because mid-size trucks were marketed as safe bets. Families bought them as compromises. Smaller, cheaper, more manageable. Instead, they discovered thinly disguised versions of their larger, broken cousins. The myth of dependability shattered, leaving customers angry that even moderation offered no refuge from corporate miscalculation. And some trucks were abandoned altogether, leaving orphans behind. Orphaned badges. Nothing erodes confidence faster than a brand that gives up on its own product. Nissan's Titan was once promoted as a legitimate rival to Ford and Chevrolet, but after years of disappointing sales, the company quietly handed down its death sentence. Dealers were left with rows of Titans that buyers no longer wanted, knowing that discontinued models meant poor parts availability and brutal resale values. Trucks that sat 180 days on lots became financial anchors, bleeding thousands before a desperate markdown finally cleared them. Ram tried another approach, selling the Classic alongside newer models. The strategy looked thrifty on the surface, using old tooling to serve budget-conscious buyers. Yet once people drove them, the flaws were obvious. Harsh rides, outdated interiors, and persistent mechanical complaints made it clear that yesterday's truck was being sold at today's price. Customers balked and inventory stacked up. Hyundai attempted something different with the Santa Cruz, positioning it as a crossover pickup hybrid. But in trying to be everything, it pleased no one. Its dual-clutch transmission proved fragile, its bed too small for serious work, and its identity too muddled to inspire loyalty. Dealers discovered that niche experiments become millstones when the market sours. Resale values for discontinued trucks collapsed almost overnight. Owners found themselves trapped with machines that no one wanted to buy, their investment turning toxic in real time. Abandoned platforms do not just punish dealers, they punish loyal customers, leaving them with obsolete vehicles and a bitter lesson in corporate abandonment. But the most dangerous forces weren't mechanical. They were financial. Debt bomb. For years, cheap credit disguised the real cost of pickup trucks. When prices crossed $60,000, lenders extended terms to 7 or even 8 years, stretching monthly payments thin enough to keep sales flowing. The result was an auto loan bubble that quietly swelled past $1 2/3 trillion. Families who would once have financed modest sedans suddenly found themselves chained to debt loads larger than their mortgages. At first, it looked manageable. Interest rates were low, resale values were strong, and dealers reassured buyers that demand would keep trucks valuable. Then the cycle broke. As interest rates climbed, delinquency rates began to rise. More households missed payments, and the used market started to soften. Owners discovered they owed more than their vehicles were worth. Trade-ins collapsed under the weight of negative equity, leaving people trapped in loans they could not refinance. The pain spread quickly. A contractor in Ohio might skip a truck payment to cover medical bills, while a family in Texas postponed groceries to keep up with financing. Debt that had once fueled the industry turned into a ticking time bomb. Each repossession added another unsold vehicle to dealer lots, worsening the glut. What was once a source of stability became the very force tearing the market apart. This spiral of debt transformed vehicles into cages. People who bought trucks for freedom now feel imprisoned by them. Each payment deepens resentment, each breakdown magnifies regret. What once was a symbol of upward mobility now chains households to financial quicksand, turning dreams of independence into nightmares of obligation. And while buyers bled monthly, dealers bled daily. $50 a day! Behind every unsold truck on a dealer lot is a hidden clock. Dealers do not own those vehicles outright. They finance them through what the industry calls floor plan loans. Every day a vehicle sits unsold, the dealer pays interest on it, often amounting to around $50. That may sound small, but stretched across rows of high-priced trucks aging for 100 days or more, it becomes devastating. Managers who once boasted about having the biggest selection in town now whisper about survival. Some confide that they would rather sell a truck at a loss than keep paying to store it. Others plead with manufacturers to halt shipments, knowing that every new delivery adds another liability. Even incentives from automakers, like temporary credits or lower floor plan rates, cannot erase the bleeding. The math is relentless. A single unsold truck can consume thousands in hidden expense before it finds a buyer. Multiply that by dozens of units, and entire dealerships risk bankruptcy. Staff feel the strain, pressured to push aging vehicles with steep discounts just to stop the financial clock. What looks like generosity to the customer is in fact desperation to the seller. Behind the polished showrooms, desperation seeps into every decision. Salespeople are instructed to pressure harder, managers slash prices they cannot afford, and dealerships quietly close doors in towns that relied on them. The collapse is not just economic, it is social, hollowing out local communities built around steady auto commerce.
Corporate boardrooms saw the same math and retreated.
We're only scratching the surface, and what comes next is even more dangerous. Subscribe now, because missing the next update could leave you blind to the decisions reshaping your money, your security, and your future. Stay ahead. Stay subscribed. Expansion to retreat. Not long ago, auto executives filled earnings calls with promises of growth. Ford spoke of expanding Lightning production. General Motors boasted of Factory Zero, churning out futuristic models. And Volkswagen plotted to conquer the American market with electric offerings. Billions of dollars were allocated, timelines were accelerated, and ribbon cuttings made headlines. Then reality struck. Demand softened, dealer lots filled, and losses mounted. Ford quietly slowed Lightning output, describing the move as a market adjustment. General Motors paused investment at Factory Zero, shifting resources back to projects that promised steadier returns. Volkswagen, facing its own struggles, delayed several planned launches in North America, choosing instead to focus on Europe and China. What had been billed as an unstoppable expansion morphed into a retreat. The consequences rippled outward. Suppliers saw orders slashed, towns dependent on plant jobs braced for layoffs, and political leaders who had celebrated new factories now scrambled to explain cutbacks. Corporate strategies that once exuded confidence now screamed caution. The very companies that defined themselves as forward-looking innovators found themselves scaling back, protecting margins rather than chasing volume. And as factories paused, the cultural badge of the truck itself cracked. Broken badge. The pickup truck has always carried meaning beyond metal and rubber. For generations, driving one signaled independence, strength, and belonging to a tradition that stretched from ranches to construction sites. Advertisements painted them as badges of honor, the machines that defined American resilience. But when prices soared above $80,000 and reliability faltered, pride gave way to skepticism. Today, neighbors glance at a new truck in the driveway and wonder how long before the payment overwhelms the household. Friends ask if the turbo or lifters will fail before the warranty expires. Contractors, once proud to showcase the newest model, now cling to older rigs, declaring that dependability is worth more than flash. The cultural script has shifted. Reliability has become the new badge, not status. Even politics reflect the change. Where trucks once symbolized patriotism and prosperity, they now stand as reminders of corporate overreach and consumer vulnerability. Communities that tied their identity to these machines feel betrayed, their icons reduced to liabilities. Pride has curdled into resentment, and the myth of invincibility has dissolved under the weight of monthly payments and mechanical fragility. That vacuum invited politics, and politics never arrives alone. Policy whiplash. Government policy was supposed to make the road to electrification smooth, but instead it has turned into a patchwork of incentives and penalties that leave buyers and automakers equally confused. One year, the federal government offered $7,500 credits for certain electric pickups. The next year, those same credits vanished or were restricted to models assembled only in specific regions. Families who thought they would receive generous rebates found out at tax time that the rules had shifted beneath their feet. Tariffs added another layer of chaos. Imported batteries were hit with penalties that added thousands of dollars to production costs, only to be offset by unpredictable state-level subsidies. Some states piled on generous rebates, while others offered nothing, creating a landscape where the price of the same truck could vary wildly depending on where it was sold. The result was paralysis. Families hesitated to buy, dealers could not advertise reliable out-the-door prices, and automakers lost faith in the stability of the playing field. Policy, meant to guide, instead became the very source of uncertainty. Automakers whispered about pausing investment until Washington delivered consistency, while buyers simply walked away. The rules did not stabilize the market, they destabilized it. And when rules shift weakly, labor takes the wheel. Labor's leverage. For decades, auto workers felt like cogs in a machine that never slowed down. But when unsold inventory began to choke lots and corporate profits shrank, the power dynamic shifted. Suddenly, strikes became far more dangerous for management than for workers. A 2-week walkout could erase millions from balance sheets already bleeding from discounts and warranty claims. Unions recognized the moment and pushed hard. Wage demands grew louder. Calls for stronger benefits echoed across factory floors, and guarantees of job security during the messy transition to electric vehicles became non-negotiable. Executives, cornered by financial strain and dealer unrest, found themselves conceding to agreements they would have dismissed just a few years earlier. Workers realized they finally had leverage not seen in decades. Communities around the plants felt the tension. Families debated whether younger generations should follow their parents into factory jobs or look elsewhere. Local businesses braced for lost income whenever shifts were cut. Yet beneath the anxiety ran a new current of pride, the sense that labor could finally shape the future instead of merely enduring it. The balance of power had shifted, and corporations could no longer ignore it. And just as Detroit hesitated, foreign rivals sharpened their knives. Rivals at the gate. While American and European manufacturers stumbled, Chinese automakers seized the moment. Companies like BYD and SAIC saw opportunity in the middle of the market, where affordability mattered most. The BYD Shark, introduced in Mexico, carried a price tag far below American competitors while still offering features that buyers wanted. SAIC's Maxus brand rolled out pickups with solid range and practical interiors at costs that legacy companies could not match. The secret lay in structure. Chinese manufacturers operated with vertically integrated supply chains, localized battery production, and labor costs far lower than those in Detroit or Wolfsburg. They could build a truck for around $15,000 and still turn a profit selling it for $20,000. By contrast, American companies staggered under production costs closer to $30,000 per unit before marketing or distribution. The gap was not narrow, it was a canyon. These rivals did not aim to dominate luxury markets. They aimed at contractors, families, and small businesses that once stretched their budgets for domestic trucks. With each shipment, they chipped away at brand loyalty, proving that reliable pickups did not need to cost $80,000. And if they can undercut the giants, what can you do as a buyer? Buyer's advantage. The collapse of the old order has flipped the script for consumers. For years, buyers walked into dealerships on the defensive, pressured by scarcity and manipulated by hidden fees. Today, the power lies with the informed shopper. Knowledge has become the most valuable currency. The first rule is to look for vehicles that have aged past 90 days on the lot. Every day of delay costs the dealer money, and by the fourth month, desperation takes over. The second rule is to demand written coverage for the systems most likely to fail, whether lifters, turbochargers, or emission components. Verbal promises are worthless. Line items and contracts are gold. The third rule is to pit dealers against one another. Walking away and showing a competitor's offer forces managers to fold faster than ever before. Stories already circulate of buyers saving $5,000 to $10,000 simply by holding firm. Contractors who once feared financial ruin now discover that persistence and patience give them leverage. Families who once resigned themselves to crushing payments now negotiate from strength. The buyer who knows the rules can walk away with more than a truck. He can walk away with victory. Knowledge is leverage, but only if you act on it. You've seen the collapse unfold. From overpriced promises to silent lots bleeding money. But here's the truth. This isn't the end. It's the beginning. Every week, new cracks appear, and those who miss them lose their edge. Don't be one of them. Subscribe now, turn on alerts, and share this with someone who still believes the market is safe. Because by the time the headlines catch up, you'll already know what's coming, and you'll be ready when they aren't.